live across all the streams.
Perfect.
Even on the PK range. Bhupinder, can you confirm that?
Second, sir.
Are we?
Yes, sir, we are live.
All right.
Perfect.
Chalo, we are starting. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Welcome to this webinar series on Kashmir. This series of programs is about reminding ourselves of January 19, 1990.
The live has
Kashmiri Hindu
ended.
Exodus Day. The topic today is genocide in Kashmir, Balochistan, and East Bengal.
Live is going to be.
It is a known fact that state of Pakistan has inflicted genocide on people living in its own territory as well as outside. Genocide in Balochistan has happened after the genocide of Bengalis in then East Pakistan, now a separate country, Bangladesh. Hindus living in Pakistan have seen a genocidal attrition and have been reduced from 23% in 1947 to less than 2% now. The genocide of Hindus in Kashmir by Pakistan aided and abetted Muslim separatist establishment in 1989 is an example that Pakistan is also a sponsor of genocide across its borders. Today's webinar is co-sponsored by PK Hindu Kashmir, Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, and Hindu Pact. The webinar series started on January 7th this year and is part of our effort designed to bring focus on recognition of Kashmiri Hindu genocide, the denial of genocide over the years, and initiating a process for reversal of genocide. I am Sanjay Kaul, an American citizen of Indian origin. I am a Kashmiri Pandit, born and brought up in Kashmir. I am one of those Kashmiri Hindus who were forced out of Kashmir. I moved to Boston in 1991. I am your moderator for this webinar today. The happenings of January 19th, 1990 triggered the exodus of minority Kashmiri Hindus. Prior to January 19th, there was targeted killings of Hindus accompanied with large-scale arson, pillage, plunder, and destruction of Hindu temples and properties. And this was aimed at creating conditions for mass exodus of the Hindus. Through this webinar today, testimonials will be provided by the actual sufferers of the Kashmiri Hindu genocide and by the victims of genocide in Balochistan, and you will hear about what had happened in East Bengal. My esteemed panel today includes representatives from 5 continents: Australia, Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. And my panelists are Lakshmi Kaul, Meenu Kaul-Bendre, Kanchan Banerjee, Nidhi Fotedar, Rakhil Razdan, Vibhuti, Sandeep, Aima, Amita, Raina, Razaq, Baloch, Tahir, Gora, and Dr. Ajay Charango. For each of my panelists, I will introduce them and then they will share their story, their views, and their comments with you. My personal goal for this event is that all of our participants and viewers must support our movement and take part in it in one way or the other. To start the webinar, I invite Mr. Kanchan Banerjee to light the ceremonial lamp and recite a prayer. Kanchan bhai.
Kanchan, you have to oh yeah, got it.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritormam Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Kanchan bhai. Thank you for lighting the ceremonial lamp and for reciting the prayers. Now let us move to our panel. Do I have Lakshmi ji? Has she joined?
Yes, Mara, I'm here.
Okay, namaskar.
Namaskar.
My first panelist today is Srimati Lakshmi Kaul. Lakshmi Kaul is an Indian British, a Kashmiri Pandit activist based in London. And Lakshmi ji, welcome. I know you were a little bit late, please share with us um, what is your understanding of what is happening in Kashmir, what has happened in Kashmir. Please share your views.
Namaskar, Sanjay ji, and namaskar to everybody. January usually is a very, very difficult year for all of us. No, not because of the cold weather. That aside, it is yet another year, and it has been to be far away from our home, our homeland, and also for me personally, another year without my daughter, which who has been my family. So the sense of loss becomes much more concretized in January, and it's not that it doesn't stay throughout. Over the last few days, we've heard people, politicians, almost reminding us that we need to. It's our duty to remember. Of course, we remember. We remember with our every single breath that the worst form of genocide has been suffered by us, and we have survived it. And so, to our my understanding of what is going on currently is more of the same. There is a continuing apathy. There are sometimes sort of signs of hope, and it excites us and makes us happy. And there is a sense of optimism. But essentially, I feel that the genocidal process has continued. And earlier today, I was counting the various steps in genocide, and it's not just with the lens of the Kashmiri Pandits that one must understand the various stages of genocide that have been suffered. But anybody and everybody who is living today must understand that there is an active process of genocide, and it is going on as we speak. And nobody seems to be bothered about it, because everybody's trying to tell themselves and their loved ones that it's okay, it's not happening to us just yet. Hamara to ghar theek thak hai. So classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, finally extermination, and currently denial. These are the various processes. That is the process of genocide. And every single one of these resonates with every single living being who is not an Islamic jihadist. Every single one of us relates with it. So that is what is currently happening. Very briefly, without taking too much time, I would, because I know you're talking about the persecution of various other friends, and I'm joined by very, very esteemed activists and panelists who have been fighting this war on the ground. I'll recount just one tiny memory of myself. So, Sanjay ji, I was born not in Kashmir. So I was born in exile even, before the 1990s. I'm not a millennial, clearly. I'm much older than that. But I'm 41 years old now, and I was born in exile. My family were uprooted even before my birth. So every time that I go to Kashmir, and I do visit quite often, I live in London, but I do visit quite often. I go looking for my home. I don't know where it is and where it was, what neighborhood it was in. So I'm one of those unfortunate people who never knew. I lived in Kashmir for 2 years continuously because of my father's posting, 88 and 89, and that is when trouble had begun. I have just one memory I'd like to share, and I'll pause there. Where we lived, the neighbors had two Muslim young boys who worked in their household, and that neighborhood had very few family homes. So it was in the BSF area, and so the commandants would keep changing. So so therefore we didn't have young children in our neighborhood. So our only friends were these young boys, Bilal and Rahim, and I was the oldest daughter of three. So I have a better recollection of what happened. Suddenly, for 2, 3 months, neither Bilal nor Rahim were anywhere in sight. And we wondered what happened to them. We thought, "Chutti gaye hain, kuch hai." But we were clearly told that wo border par training ke liye gaye hain. As a young girl of 9 or 10 years old, I remember this statement very, very clearly. And it didn't make sense to me because, from Chandigarh to Kashmir, I mean, I had no background context of whatever was going on. So we didn't think too much of it. when they came back, they stopped playing with us and they started praying more often. And they just did not even look at us. They would not play with us in the same way. They would not even talk to us. And they were all always looking very angry and agitated and very different. Something had changed. And then very soon, as 89 almost ended, it was time for us to move on in our posting, or perhaps, my father preponed his posting and we left. Nobody has ever told us. So that's my memory. And it did not make sense at the time. I had no friends in Kashmir in school. I went to a Woodland House school for 2 years. And the Pandit girls and boys, they thought कि ये चंडीगढ़ की लड़की है, MS Koshur Tagani, तो इससे क्या हम बात करेंगे, तो ये तो बाहर की लड़की है. Muslims obviously did not talk to me. There was a Shia young girl, Shagufta, who was my only friend in school. I don't know whether she's even alive today or where she is. I hope she is. By the time we would walk towards the school gate, tab tak to sab theek tha. And as we approach the school gate and Woodland House School, it is usme
Yes.
सीढ़ी चढ़ के ऊपर जाना पड़ता है.
I have to.
Yeah, I know. I will quickly wrap up. So, but before approaching the school gate, she would suddenly separate from me. She would say, "Just don't walk with me. I'll get into trouble." As a young girl, I didn't know what that meant. Years later, now I realize what was going on. Now I realize what was happening to us. And I'll actually stop there. So the process of genocide is very much on, sir, Sanjay ji.
Thank you. Thank you, Lakshmi ji, for sharing those comments with us of your observation of visiting Kashmir. I want to remind every panelist that this is being designed as a lightning talk panel. So please stick to the times that I have assigned to you. I would appreciate that. I really don't like to interrupt, but please do respect the timings that have been assigned. My second panelist today is Meenu Kaul-Bendre. Meenu Kaul-Bendre is an electronics graduate with masters in marketing and finance. She's a cultural activist. Today, she joins us from Nigeria, where she works for International Diplomatic Mission. She volunteers for charitable organizations and has a passion to contribute towards uplifting the underprivileged members of the society and bring a change. Meenuji, please share with us your story.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you for having me on board. And it's every year when we talk about January 19th, it's the same feelings. And without being very quick about it, I want to give you my testimony, like how on that fateful night we were having these blarings from the mosques and shoutings of Nalai Takbir, Allahu Akbar coming from all corners. And we were having our dinner, and when we started, we could not even gulp down a morsel after the blaring slogan started coming from the loudspeakers. The whole night we did not sleep a wink. So that was the beginning of the trouble. And I remember it kept on lingering on my young mind, and it was an impressionable age, and it actually reduced my confidence to zero. In fact, my dad, who stayed on, wanted me and my sister to leave the valley. So I did not want to go. I definitely wanted to stay on, but because he forced us, and I had to leave with my aunt. And I remember that time that we were asked to go to Zaina Kadal. Zaina Kadal is a downtown area in Srinagar. From Sanat Nagar, we moved to Zaina Kadal because I had to accompany my aunt to Jammu. And during that time, we were paraded. When we reached Zaina Kadal, we were paraded. We were also forced to chant Allahu Akbar. And it was a very disheartening time. And the next day, when we moved to Jammu in a taxi, we were seen with a lot of people on the road, and they kept on stopping us at every nook and corner. When we further moved on at exhibition grounds, there was an ambush happening between the terrorists and the army. and we got caught in this firing. I remember my sister started crying and we slid down the seats, and it was all deafening from all sides. Eventually, we moved down, and the taxi driver, after mustering some courage, he actually got up and he started driving forth. I also happened to see the body of Shri Nilkant Ganju when I was returning home, and it again impacted me so much. I saw him from a distance, and nobody was close to him. And later I came to know that he was the one who sat on the herring of Makbul Butt, and that's why he was shot dead in broad daylight. My dad was the last Hindu doctor in the Ranawari hospital, and he was so well known. He people used to say that he has shafa in his hands. But he got a call from the militants, and he was told that he should leave the valley. And I really feel the circumstances he's moved on, and how we started from scratch. And he used to always call himself the worried man of Kashmir. Shopping for spoons and utensils and plates after living in a very cozy and comfortable home in Srinagar was not easy. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for all the other Kashmiri parents. And the main aim for them was to just see that their children had a good education. It's heartening, and every year when I was thinking about it, it actually got goosebumps to me. And after all these years, remembering these stories is not easy. I would say that Kashmir issue has made me a stronger person, though it has come at a high cost. I lost my innocence at a very early age, and I'm unable to, erase those horrible times. My head actually bows down to offer a prayer for my father and all those Kashmiri Pandits who have left this world without being able to go back home. Wonder if it will be achieved in my lifetime. So going back, I would say that we had a very difficult childhood. We had a difficult the way we had to live in my aunt's home for some time. It wasn't easy. It came with a lot of price, and probably I hope that something happens. Like I said, my father is no more, and even there's so many Kashmiri Pandits who I know would have wanted to go back home, but I don't know if we're going to see it in future.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I hope I have not exceeded my time.
Thank you, Meenu, and thank you for. It's not easy to go back and relive the things that we have all undergone. It is a genocide that happened in Kashmir, and we are fighting it. So let's hope something better comes up through the efforts of the organizations that are working hard. Moving on to my third panelist is Shri Kanchan Banerjee. Kanchan Banerjee is the managing director and co-founder of Boston Center for Excellence for Health and Human Development. He is the president of Global Indians for Bharat Vikas. Apart from starting numerous cultural and social organizations in the US, he has been the editor-in-chief of an international magazine called New Global. Kanchan Bhai, you're from West Bengal and very actively involved with the society there. Please share your knowledge of the genocide in then East Bengal and now Bangladesh. Kanchan Bhai.
Namaste, Sanjay ji. Thank you for having me on this panel of esteemed experts. I am not an expert, but I would like to start with a prayer. I always go back to history, the root cause. So the prayer, many of you know. Namaste Sarada Devi Kashmira Puravashini Tamaham Prarthayante Nityam Vidya Danancha Dehime. This is a prayer for Ma Sarda. And as you most of you know that Sarda Peeth was in Kashmir and it is no more with us at this time. It has been destroyed by a fanatic called Sikandar Butsikan, as you know, around 1389 to 1400s. And that was a major cause of downfall of our history of India because of the loss of this great um, place of learning. And the root cause for these genocides, as you all know, is rooted in certain scriptures within Islamic tradition, where it says that uh, is Darul Harb and Darul Islam. Darul Islam is where the Islamic laws are prevalent, and Darul Harb where it has not. So the goal of certain Islamist organizations and groups is to make the whole world Darul Islam. And that's the root cause. We all know, and we should not be shy about it. The genocide actually started in India with the advent of Alexander around 320 BC. But generally, we go back to the time of the bin Kashim when he attacked Sindh in 711 C. Then came Ghazni in 1001. Then came the Goris and so forth, Ghazni, Mahmud Ghazni, and 1193, Khilji came and destroyed several of our universities, including Nalanda and Bikramshila. Babur came and Aurangzeb came. We know all these stories very well, that how systematically this destroyed our civilization. And an estimated loss of life is about 80 million during this period of Islamic invasion and Islamic rule. Fast forward to east part of India. In 1940, Jinnah declared the so-called Lahore Declaration that, or Direct Action Day, that they wanted to have a separate land for the Muslims who could not live in Darul Harb. They needed Darul Islam. So that direct action translated in Calcutta in 1946, August. There was so-called Great Calcutta Killing. Suhrawardi, who was the prime minister. There were roughly 10,000 people were killed, and about 1 million people were displaced from Calcutta because they wanted Calcutta to be part of the new United Bengal or East Pakistan. And in Calcutta was a Hindu majority city, so they wanted to get rid of Hindus and make it a Hindu minority so that they could claim that it should go to East Pakistan. And followed by that was the Noakhali massacre, which is in Bangladesh now. Around 10,000 people again were killed, converted. There are about 1 million people converted in that few months period. Either they had to convert or they had to leave, they had to die. Then came the War of Independence of Bangladesh between 1969 and it ended in 71 when Bangladesh was created. During that period, 3 million people were killed and 85% people were Hindus. Their houses would be marked with a flag, yellow flag, and they would go kill, take the women, children. There are 3 million people died, and about 200,000 of our women folks were raped, to a degree that Mujib, the new prime minister, had to bring experts from Sweden and other countries to treat them, to rehabilitate them. It's a very, very sad saga in that part of the world, which continues till date. And every day we hear about atrocities against the Hindus, Buddhists, and even Christians, all the minorities. And when partition happened, there were about 30% Hindu Buddhist in Bangladesh. Today, it's around 10%. So we can see how systematically the population has been victim of a planned genocide or pogrom, whatever you want to call. And this genocide, it continues, and it is predicted by some experts, including Dhaka University Professor Abdul Barkat, that Hindus will be no more there by 2050. There'll be no Hindu Buddhists left in Bangladesh. So that is what is happening, and the effect of that is also happening in West Bengal, which was a Hindu majority at that time, and Muslim population was around 25 in the divided Bengal. Now it is about 35% Muslim population. And every day we hear from Bengal, with the help of the current Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's parties help that Islamists are also attacking Hindus almost on a daily basis. And that is the sad story.
Yeah.
And I remember in 71, my quick memory, I was 10 years old when the war was going on in East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh today. And every day we were hearing from the radio news that was broadcasted from the Indian side, how many people are killed every day. And it was a horror story. And that story continues.
Thank you, Kanchan.
With that,
for giving it a historic context and relating that right from the time of Alexander to what happened when Islam was coming into Indian subcontinent and to East Bengal. Thank you so much. My next panelist is Srimati Nidhi Fotedar. Nidhi Fotedar is a London-based technology professional. She is one among those who suffered in the 1990 persecution of Kashmiri Pandits. Nidhi ji, please tell us your experience of Kashmir.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you, Lakshmi ji, esteemed members of the panel, and all dear friends who are listening to us today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about my memories of Kashmir. I was born in Kashmir and in the process of being raised in Kashmir, which of course, unfortunately, or should I use the word premeditatedly, got halted by the Islamist terrorism activities which happened in the valley. When Lakshmi asked me to come and speak about my memories of Kashmir, I thought, well, that's easy. I've always lived in that parallel universe. That 10-year-old Nidhi, a glimpse of who you can see in these pictures, has really never left Kashmir. I can still feel the fresh smell of the flowers of my home. I can still feel the swing of my apple tree. I can still feel the snow of Kashmir. It's all there, absolutely fresh in my mind. Life in Kashmir, I can safely tell you, was straight out of a Wordsworth poem. Kashmir is scenic, Kashmir is beautiful, Kashmir is picturesque. Be it Zabarwan, be it Shankaracharya, be it Harvan, Nishad Bagh, names galore, you name it. It's simply breathtakingly beautiful. And I was personally very lucky to be born in a family which had the most beautiful orchards and the most beautiful gardens. I have this beautiful memory from my childhood of handpicking beautiful flowers from our own garden and making big bouquets with my parents and giving that to my teachers and giving that to my friends. And the joy on their faces was simply amazing. I always talk of the snow, the mystery stories of the Yeti and whatnot. Unfortunately, this beautiful Wordsworth poem came to a tragic halt with the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley. And you've heard some tragic anecdotes already. Switch gears. And even before you do that, honestly, life in Kashmir always felt like a big trekking, camping, sunbasking adventure, only it had to turn very, very dark. My 7-year-old son, bless him, he recently asked me, of course, amid these very strange times, Mum, have you been in a lockdown before? That question hit me like a stone. And I thought, yes, I have been in a lockdown. I have been in one of the most horrific lockdowns ever, when things were forcibly shut, schools were shut, offices were shut, everything was being shut down by the extremists. I loved going to school. I will tell you this very, very horrible, terrifying incident when we all primary school children, we were being kept in a hall, a big hall, and our primary school teachers huddling us and trying to protect us from what? From separatists, extremists pelting stones at young primary school children for no good rhyme or reason. And this, my dear friends, was yet another start to scare Kashmiri Pandits out of the valley on threat, on gunpoint. This is one of the many, many tragic things which happened during that terrifying and very difficult winter of 1989. Schools were not open, of course. I loved going to school. I was a stubborn girl, and I would tell my parents, no, I must go to school. And you see this little blue picture at the bottom of the slide. I like to call it my last photo of Kashmir. Well, why? Because my parents humored me and said, okay, dear, you can't go to school, but let's go to this photo studio and get you a nice photo done. And we did that. Who knew? Who knew that day would be the last day I would ever wear my school uniform in Srinagar that I otherwise wore with such great pride and great happiness every single day? Look at this bottom right picture with my brother in my mother's arms. He's less than 6 months old there. And we were just sitting having dinner, and there are suddenly announcements on loudspeakers which said, oh, the water supply in the city has been poisoned. And my mother had just fed formula milk to my younger brother, and we were thinking, oh my God, this is absolutely terrifying. What are we going to do? Of course, the hospitals were shut in the city, and such is the kind of terrorism, kind of terror that was going on. We were all eventually huddled onto an army truck, and I remember seeing the horror on the faces of people around me. Somehow we survived.
Apology to stop you.
Somehow we survived.
Your sharing is not working. Your screen, your pictures are not being shown.
Okay, I'll just try to reshare very quickly because these are quite important.
Yes.
To me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Show the picture. Your time is almost up.
Yeah. Pictures speak 1,000 words, so I'll be quite very quick. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. These were the two pictures. These are the pictures from the gardens and the orchards, and then of course this blue little picture and this picture of my brother. And then we had to leave in these horrible conditions in an army truck. We started life over again in Delhi in a shoddy room, and that's a story from riches to rags, so to speak. I tell the story of suffering of Kashmiri Pandits, of atrocities and injustice done to us, to our children. And I tell them that, lest we forget.
Thank you.
Before I conclude, I must just say these two lines from Kabuliwala, because it resonates Kashmir for me every single day. "Ae mere pyare watan, ae mere bichde chaman, tuj pe dil kurban." Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you,
to share my
Nidhi.
story.
You have a beautiful way of expressing whatever you have observed, whatever you have lived. And I thank you for joining us today and sharing your story with us. My next panelist is Shri Rakhil Razdan. Mr. Rakhil Razdan is a social and cultural activist. He joins us from down under Australia. He was born and brought up in Kashmir. And after his exodus from Kashmir, he moved to Australia and lives in Melbourne. Rakhilji, please share your story with us.
Namaskar. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Sanjay ji, for inviting me to this very important session. Now, I have heard some of the other panelists, and it does resonate a common theme across that a lot of us have suffered in Kashmir and are still suffering over 30 years after the events of 1990, January 1990. I thought about this genocide in Kashmir and what should I say? Now, my family, both my in-laws as well as my own parents, suffered like so many other Kashmiri Pandits, but they were among the lucky ones, I call them. I won't go into that because I thought that that story is pretty common and it's been well documented across so many books, so many articles. I had a different take on this. I have two girls, and we used to discuss Kashmir when they were young, but we never tried to influence their decisions on Kashmir. They used to hear us speak, me and my wife, but we never spoke to our kids on this. We only told them what happened in Kashmir without trying to influence their minds. And this went on, and my kids have grown up. And a couple of years ago, my younger daughter, Aditi Razdan, she is pretty much into writing also, apart from her other professional achievements. And she wrote this article on Kashmir. And then she sent it to me. She said, "Dad, I have written this article for one of the newspapers in Australia," and it went online. And went pretty viral. She said, do you think I can send it to Kashmir for publishing? And so I read the article, and I can tell you my heart was filled with pride because, we thought that we had never told our kids about Kashmir, enough about Kashmir, because we wanted them to find out for themselves. And because ours is a very biased view. And she wrote this article in Kashmir Times. It's called Of Kashmiriyat and Inheritance of Memories. If you can Google it, you'll find it, by Aditi Razdan. And I can tell you that, some of the things she wrote in this, and me and my wife, we were amazed. I said, all these years, obviously these girls have been listening to us and, doing their own research. And she has written a beautiful article, a very well-balanced article. And in that, I'll just read a few lines. She says, sometimes resistance is not violent. Sometimes it's reinforcing what is peripheral to a culture because the roots of it are still in the homeland. The Kashmir Valley at the foot of the Himalayas endures both kinds. My family, as far as we can trace, are Kashmiri Pandits. They inhabited the Kashmir Valley since a time predating the Mughal rule, the British time, British colonization, partition, geopolitical rivalry, hegemonic intrusion and repression from multiple state actors. They lived in a valley that embraced the beloved indigenous multiculturalism, a fusion and celebration of all religions and traditions. And then she ends, it's a long article, and then she ends, which really gave me an idea that these girls, even though they were not even born in Kashmir, do feel connected. And me and my wife, we sometimes think that maybe we did something right. It's, instead of speaking on Kashmir all the time, we just told them to do their own research. And the balanced view they have on Kashmir, really, and then they write here, and then she writes in the end, the way she ends. There are many, anecdotes in that article. If you have time, you can read it. But she says, just writing this story is my own way of reminding you that my community will endure and our stories will survive. So on genocide, this has been happening in Kashmir for centuries. Because of social media, it's come into, we talk more about it. If you look at Kashmir, we have been suffering for the last over 500 years. If you go back into history, I'm sure you guys know about it. Now, what do we do about it as Kashmiris? We have to fight our own battles. I've seen a lot of people, talking about Ghar Wapsi, or the BJP government did this, or the Congress government did that. In the end, we have to fight our own battles. That's all I can say. And all of us in our own small way can contribute to it. Like we did with our daughters, we didn't try to influence their minds, but giving them the right information, and they form their own minds. So from what I see here, our stories are all common. Every family has suffered, whether directly or indirectly. I didn't suffer, my wife didn't suffer because we were not in Kashmir, but my parents and my in-laws suffered. So what I can say is that these forums are very important. Our job is to send that information out there. And as long as we do that, we'll keep this alive and we'll keep our traditions alive. That's all I have to say today.
Thank you, Rakhil. Thank you so much for sharing the story through the article of your daughter. Like they say in Kashmiri, "Kokur chuta chan to pooch chan," meaning the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So
yeah.
You're right. Whatever you have done has been conveyed to your children and everybody. This is the story with every Kashmiri family. I think it's passed through the genes. We love Kashmir. We want to be in Kashmir, and that is the place where the soul of our ancestors lies. So we cannot be separated from it. So we have to go back, and rightly said, we all have to fight for it. Moving on, my next panelist is Shri Vibhuti Jha. Mr. Jha came to US in 1991 in leadership role with the American Express Bank to build and develop Indo-US business relationship. He has an MBA in International Management from IMI India, Vibhuti ji is an entrepreneur and dares to be different. After seeing the lack of awareness about India, he designed, edited, presented, and was an anchor of a TV program. He is associated with ITV Gold and also has his TV programs. Vibhuti ji, as an outside observer, what is your understanding of the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus? Please share your views with us.
Thank you very much to be with real people who have real suffering, experience real torture and suffering. So Sanjay ji, thank you very much for inviting me. I heard the first bullet in 1989 that was fired in Kashmir. I was there. We were there for 3 days for our conference, stayed in the beautiful Oberoi Hotel, the palace. And, I have an intuitive sense of seeing things differently. And I saw the tension that we were followed by the groups of people wherever we went. And I said, this is not okay. It doesn't seem normal. I had not known about the insurgency that was mounting. But I will take that step forward. I always believe in saying that, what next? What next? Why did it happen? We were Sharda Peeth, seat of knowledge. How did we let it happen to us? And where do we go from here? The tragedy and suffering of Rakhil ji, Lakshmi ji, Nidhi ji, and everybody else. I know it because Rakesh Kaul and Dr. Nirmal Mehta, we did shows here on my TV program to talk about what was actually going on. And I was in Delhi in 1990 when the Exodus happened, the final Exodus happened there. Media kept shut. The stories of Kashmiri suffering was never known around. It was actually angered me that even the political leadership at that time suppressed the whole concept of genocide and suffering. Today, I am talking about it. I'm talking about it, where do we go from here next? Because this will continue, as some of you observed. If we do not stop the villain in the tracks, this will continue. And I would urge all of you, and I will share that with Sanjay ji to sharing with everybody, is a recent program that I did with Mr. Sanjay Dikshit on his book, Unbreaking India, CA, the story of CA and Article 370. And we spent considerable time in trying to figure out what is the nature of the beast that we are dealing with. And I think the first speaker here talked about that religion has a lot to do with it. So the question is, how do we reform them? If they don't change, then what do we do about it? So my focus today in these 3 minutes is to appeal to your strength, appeal to your wisdom, to determine what next. The enemy wants us to cry. Enemy wants to see us suffer. Enemy wants our tears to roll down every day, because that's where he enjoys the pleasures of making us suffer. Where do we go from here? And I say this very openly, whether you are a vegan, vegetarian, or ultimate ahimsa ke pujari, if your family is attacked, you have to rise up to protect and defend. If we are not ready to do so, we will have to leave our villages, leave our towns. But that's the nature of the beast. We have to confront it. We are confronting here. So my appeal to everybody is here to have a serious conversation. What next? Why was it not designated as genocide? Why did it take so long to designate this entire tragedy as a genocide only last year by the BJP government? And the question is, this is a very important one. While I have 19th January last year, we did a wonderful program commemorating the memory of 19th January. And I shared this with some of my American friends. Somebody used here the word fight. This fight has to continue. I shared with my American friends that look at the power of our Hindu Sanatan Dharma. Not one Kashmiri chose weapon to fight back there or become a jihadi to blow up the Muslim camps. You know what my American friend said? He said, that's truly outstanding that you have so much tolerance to accept such inhuman treatment. And then he said, but to ask you a question, none of you fought back? The 500,000 people who left in 1989, and the history has been, we know the history now, there's so many people had to leave Kashmir. And this genocide has been happening in the stages. Nobody fought back. 80% of India is Hindu and nobody fought back? And that's the question that has to be addressed. Somewhere along the line, we have to mobilize, we have to coordinate, and we have to cooperate to instill the action part of it. Bhagavad Gita says, Dharm ke raksha ke liye dharm ladna hai. We can't become, our history teaches us that whenever there has been injustice, you have to fight to survive. And its teachings are all there. So the question is, if we accept intolerance, intolerance breeds intolerance. And that's what is happening, that we cannot allow this kind of an intolerance to affect us. I invite this, I would suggest, Sanjay ji, you've done a great job of putting this together. Have more conversations about what next. Education, spread the tragedy, the violence, and address the situation. That who are the perpetrators? Why are we politically correct in calling the evil out? And evil is not particularly related to A, B, C, D, E, F, but the evil of violence. Where does it come from? God did not create religion. People did. And that's why we have to oppose religious diktats and mandates that the life has to be like this. Every single one of us, men, women, have our designated body parts, mind, body, and soul that performs identical function. We have to learn the art of questioning and inquiring. More on it later. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I join you in your suffering. And I remember 1989, when we heard the first bullet. I may have very little connection with the tragedy, but I know the suffering and the pain.
Thank you so much, Vibhuti ji. When I hear people like you who share the pain and who really question why it took this long, 3 decades, for anybody to recognize that a genocide is happened in Kashmir. And then you question, where do we go from here? And it is for us to fight. It's not for anybody else. Yeah, we have had tolerance as an ornament, but it has been used against us as a weapon. And we have to fight for what is rightfully ours. We have to fight for defending our families. My next panelist is Shri Sandeep Aima. Sandeep ji is a social activist. He was born and brought up in Kashmir and is currently stationed in Middle East. His objective is achieve homeland for his community. Sandeep ji, please share your experience of Kashmir with us.
Namaskar, Sanjay ji. Thank you very much. My experience of the 7th Exodus is no different from any other Kashmiri Pandit who has witnessed the Black Night, as I call it, of 19 January 1990 in the Valley. The whole experience was horrendous, nerve-wrenching, traumatic, and has left a deep scar on our mind and souls, which can never be healed. I still have nightmares of the slogans that were sounded using public address system meant for calling the faithful to prayers. Recalling those inflammatory speeches brings back memories of that Black Night. Some of the shouts I would like to recall everyone were Kafiro Kashmir chhod do, Indian dogs go back, hum kya chahte azadi, aise gaise Pakistan, batoro sthit batno san. Just to translate for the people who don't understand Kashmiri is, we want Pakistan without KP women and without KP men. जिस कश्मीर को खून से सींचा है वो कश्मीर हमारा है, कश्मीर में अगर रहना है अल्लाह अकबर कहना है, यहाँ क्या चलेगा निजाम मुस्तफा. We all Kashmiris, sons of Avanti Varma, Lalit Aditya, the original inhabitants of Kashmir, with a record culture and civilization history of over 7,000 years, were going to get deceived, and this time for the seventh time. What was our fault? Because we had an ego of national pride that runs in our blood. We are proud Indians. We are peaceful citizens of a peaceful nation who believes in coexistence. Was that our fault? We have been deceived, used, and thrown by politicians, even by one-time migrant of our own community, Nehru. We have been cheated by our leaders, assaulted by fanatics, eliminated by perpetrators, and slaughtered by militants. Unfortunately, irony of the fate is that these horrible and gory tales of Kashmiri Pandits have gone unheard and story being distorted. I want to remind all of you again that who had attempted to distort the history at the edge of a sword or at a point of gun, you can distort the history. You cannot ignore it. Throw it out the past from the window, from the door, and it comes back in through the window. Kashmiriyat, people talk about Kashmiriyat, a facade which is being presented to the outside world and made fool out of it. Let me tell you that there was no such word like Kashmiriyat. If at all it existed in its pretend letter, then there wouldn't have been any Kashmiri Pandit Exodus. Not one, not two, not three, 7. Where was Kashmiriyat when they killed children, women, men of our community, raped our women? Where was their Kashmiriyat? We are all innocent victims of well-planned ethnic cleansing. We are humiliated, massacred, decimated, annihilated as soft players. We are at a very serious verge of extinction, and we need to act now. 30 years has taught us a lot of lessons, and one thing is very clear, that we need to fight our own battle. No one else is going to fight for us. We have to create noise, and this time we need to be heard, be it on social media, print, digital media, or by educating and narrating our painful exodus. No matter how many times you have to narrate it, you have to narrate it. Events need to be told to our younger generations so they know what their parents and grandparents and ancestors have gone through. This has not been easy for us. I pity, please underline this word pity. I pity that people who are victims of worst kind of genocides in the contemporary times are talking about reconciliation, where the perpetrator is in denial mode and has never accepted his role in genocide. Let me remind each one of us that the only responsibility of the victim is to tell only the truth. And the truth is that the genocide and reconciliation does not go together. And the truth also is to put a stop to perpetual genocide. Creating Panun Kashmir to bring in a sustainable peace, not only in the region, but to create a model for the world peace. And that model is Panun Kashmir. Let the people in the power corridors be reminded that there is no other way but the creation of Panun Kashmir. And let me also, through your medium, tell you that very soon there will be a reality, and that reality will be Panun Kashmir. Roadmap to our homeland, Panun Kashmir, has been paved with the adoption of a Margdarshan resolution in 1991. Introduction of Panun Kashmir Genocide and Atrocities Bill, Prevention Bill 2020 has been presented to the Government of India. I urge you all to support this bill by signing it online. We are almost there. It's just a matter of time. Before I close, I want to highlight one important issue that our community is facing, and this is of our negative population growth. We need to tilt the graph and get it on the positive side before it's too late. We will not exist.
Sandeep.
Last but not the least, Sanjay ji, we all Kashmiris have a moral responsibility towards our community, and we all owe it to our community. We need to give it back to our community in whatever way we can. How small, how big, doesn't matter. We owe it to our community. A request to all community leaders, please stop making jalebis. Enough. 30 years is a long time, 3 decades. 2 of our generations who wanted to go back are gone out of this world, waiting to go back. And get united for a common cause, for the sake of our younger generation. And let me remind the words of Captain Tikku while practicing pranayam, while inhaling, utter the word mantra, rather, genocide is to be avenged, and while exhaling, genocide is to be reversed. Jai Bharat, Jai Panun Kashmir. Namaskar.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Yeah, you rightly said, history cannot be forgotten. Those who forget history are bound to repeat it, and we shall not forget what happened to us. My next panelist is Srimati Amita Raina. Mrs. Amita Jala Raina is an educationist and a writer who works with young children in United Kingdom. She was born and brought up and lived outside of Kashmir with deep roots in Kashmir from her parents Jalas of Safakadal, Ranawari, and her husband's family Rainas from Amira Kadal area. Amitaji, please share your story and your association with Kashmir with us.
Namaskar, everyone, and thank you, Sanjay and Lakshmi, for inviting me to this panel to share my experiences. My experiences are slightly different from everyone. I've had the impact of this migrations in two different ways. I mean, firstly, my grandfather, they moved out in 1947, because of which, obviously, the exodus at that time. And ever since then, we've never actually gone back to Kashmir. So obviously, I've heard lots of stories and pictures from my parents and grandparents. And the second impact that I've had is after I got married to my husband, Ashish Raina, and they were actually, they moved out in 1989 in the peak of the exodus. And the stories that I've heard from their side of the family is actually quite heartbreaking, quite similar to some of what I've heard from the others. Theirs was a business family, so obviously they were deeply affected, and once they had moved out, they had to reestablish everything from scratch. So it's been quite a tough, I mean, the few years that they've reestablished, it's been quite tough to actually emotionally to come out of the whole exodus and the thoughts of what they had to obviously leave behind, the school, the home, everything, as most of you probably have had to do so as well. One of my experiences is my uncle, Dr. Ashok Ban. He was posted as IG in Kashmir, and he used to tell us stories about how unsafe it is, and he was ambushed and attacked, and his family was in constant hit list. So I think those were some of the stories that I had heard which impacted my idea or experiences of Kashmir. We lived in Pamposh, and my parents still live there. So my parents and my family have kept the Kashmiri traditions, the cultures alive by language. My memories are, Pamposh is completely inhabited by a lot of Kashmiri, so we had a lot of celebrations together as a community. And here in the UK as well, we do similar things, like with my children, how we share the whole Kashmiri traditions, the language. They're aware of all the festivals, the community. We have lots of get-togethers just to keep the traditions alive. And I think, as some of the panelists rightly said, that the genocide has been happening for quite a few centuries. So, and the social media is one of the good platforms where we can spread the word about what has happened, make people aware, make our next generation aware of how their parents and their previous generations have experienced the genocide, so that they know the history of Kashmir, and then keep it alive to spread the word about what has happened, about the ethnic cleansing as well. So I think, this is my perspective is that we can keep the whole, we can keep the traditions alive, we can keep the language alive, we can keep the culture alive through our children, and this way we can spread the word as well to the rest of the world as what is actually happening in Kashmir and what has actually happened with the Kashmiri Pandits. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your views, Amitaji. My next panelist is Shri Razaq Baloch. Mr. Razaq Baloch grew up in Balochistan and belongs to a renowned political family of Balochistan. He is the Secretary General of Baloch American Congress. He is a political and human rights activist, currently based in Miami, and he is the organizer of Baloch Human Rights Council based in London. Razaq Saab, please share your story of genocide in Balochistan with us.
Thank you, Sanjay Bhai, for the opportunity, and thank you for the invitation. And Baloch American Congress is based in America. And the genocide of Balochistan is a long history. And it's not going to be, time constrained. We have to understand, we have to understand one thing. Let me give my tributes and salute to our lioness, Karima Baloch. She had to leave Balochistan, came take shelter in Canada, and mysteriously she found dead. And this is going on inside Balochistan and outside Balochistan. Our problem is the wealth of Balochistan. And the Kashmir problem is they want to cling on that excuse to carry on the army rule in Pakistan. There is no democracy in Pakistan. You have to understand one thing. They are surviving on Kashmir and Balochistan. And this fight is not going to end because the Pakistan army, such a big army, and Pakistan cannot feed them. They don't have an economy. They are using Balochistan's resources. Look at the beautiful ocean. Start from 14 miles from Karachi and goes up to Iran, Bandar Abbas. And now another partner, China, has become another criminal partner to loot and plunder Balochistan's wealth. So we are not going to give up and we are not going to surrender. Pakistan has a history of surrendering in Bangladesh. Just imagine, 60% of Bangladesh was Pakistan, is Pakistan. And the rest, 40%, became Pakistan again. What kind of United Nations is that? After all that genocide and murder and rape and all those atrocities, and then all these military generals were released. Our political leadership stood by with the Bengalis, and we got the punishment later on. The same army, India released, they came and attacked our Chief Minister Sardar Ataullah Khan Mangal's government and start operation in military operation in Balochistan. We have so many episodes of this military atrocities. And thousands and thousands of people are missing. I agree with Mr. Vibhuti, Jaha, that we have to find out what is the problem. You cannot talk. Pakistan doesn't have a system. They bring dummy people. You cannot talk to dummy people. The Prime Minister is dummy and all the social. When you talk to them, they say they're bloody civilians. So how are we going to tackle that? The only thing, the responsibility is with the Indian leadership. If the Indian leadership was not weak, this country will not exist. It starts from there. Muhammad Ali Jinnah betrayed into his own country, India. They're telling us, oh, you are against Pakistan. Pakistan is not a country, especially after Bangladesh is gone. How can you call it a country? And then if you go to Balochistan, you cannot move around. It's like a military garrison all over. We cannot breathe. And it pains me when people say the Balochistan is poor and people of Balochistan are poor. People of Balochistan are not poor. Our gold, this dummy prime minister says we're going to pay our debt with the gold of Balochistan. And our people are suffering. For how long? India going to tolerate that? People of Sindh are suffering. People of Gilgit-Baltistan are suffering. Kashmir is suffering. Look at they destroy the Pashtun land. This is like a jail in Balochistan. All we need is the action. We need international forums. We need action from the governments of America. Like they're ready to help Tibet to get rid of China from there. So what about Balochistan? So America and India has a responsibility to come forward. Let me assure you one thing. When there is, Balochistan is free from Pakistan's clutches, Pakistan cannot survive. Your problems are also going to be automatically solved. I look forward to see that our friends will coordinate and we're going to move forward and bring these atrocities to end, because they're not going to stop. It doesn't matter how many stories we tell, but the root cause of the problem is the Pakistan army. So you have to rein in Pakistan army and help us get rid of that army and drive them out from our land. Because Balochistan was a separate country. Balochistan was not a part of Pakistan. In 1947, Jinnah was our lawyer. And he took his fees in gold. We weigh him in gold to give him his fees so that we got freedom in 11th of August. And then they betrayed us. Then they realized that they made two mistakes. One mistake is Kashmir, because they did not want the India to get access towards Afghanistan and upwards. And then the Balochistan, the landmass of Balochistan. So that's how they keep Kashmir and this thing under the clutches. How can you be complete without Sindh and Kashmir? First, you have to take action. All we need is your moral support on international stages, and we're gonna go further, and we're gonna tell the civilized world what is going on in Balochistan and Kashmir and Sindh, Gilgit-Baltistan, Pashtunistan. Look at beautiful culture. These cultures are built in centuries and in thousands of years. And now we are under the clutches of these jihadi army. And how can you tolerate that? Such a big country, India, and such a big country, America, should not tolerate all that, because we are in 21st century. We have to come together, coordinate, and take our cause further. Thank you very much, Sanjay.
Thank you, Razaq Saab. Thank you for sharing your story of genocide in Balochistan with us. We feel the pain of Baloch, we feel the pain of Pashtuns. the way we feel our own pain of genocide. We are brothers indeed, and you have appealed to the governments across the globe and Indian government in particular to support you so that the genocide is reversed and people become free and can live peacefully. Thank you for sharing that. My next panelist is Shri Tahir Gora. Tahir Gora is an author, journalist, political activist. He is founder of Canadian Thinkers Forum and Tag TV channel. Some of his shows in Urdu and Hindi languages have received over 100 million views in Southeast Asia. He recently launched international news channel, The Ink TV. Tahirji is a fierce critic of Islamist jihadi ideology. He is a co-author of the book Submission, Threats of Political Islam to Canada and United States. His novel Rang Mahal portrays the dilemma of multiculturalism in West. Tahir Bhai, namaskar. As a journalist, please describe the role which the state of Pakistan plays in genocide on the people living in its own country, its own territory, as well as outside. And do share your understanding of the conditions that prompted the exodus of minority Hindus from Kashmir.
Thank you very much, Sanjay Bhai. Namaste, brothers and sisters. It's obviously very painful to recall the memories of, horror memories of January 19, 1990. As we all know, 31 years ago, Kashmiri Hindus faced ethnic cleansing as they were forced out of their lands by pro-Pakistani Islamist insurgents. The cold, dark night of January 1990 stirred into life the worst nightmares of Kashmiri Pandits living in the valley. Screaming from loudspeakers and crowded streets was the message for the Hindus living in Kashmir: either convert to Islam or leave the land or die. After 31 years, I was hoping to find a docudrama series on Netflix that could tell the world about the horrors of 1990 Hindu Kashmiri genocide and exodus. Unfortunately, it didn't happen this year too. So far, we are telling the story to our own people in a circular manner, but the world must know about it, as the world knows about Jewish Holocaust, Armenian genocide, Sudanese genocide, or even lately Rohingya genocide. We don't need any Bollywood-style drama movies. Already couple Bollywood movies with Kashmiri fashion dresses, love songs, and fake acting failed to serve the purpose. I remember about 11 years ago, I took the mission to take Kashmiri Hindus' voice to South Asian masses through my TV shows. Millions happened to watch those shows. Now I dream to produce docudramas and documentaries depicting the horrors of Kashmiri Hindus' genocide and exodus with the help of Indian, American, and European actors, presenters, and directors for Netflix and all social media platforms. If I could get support and provided my health allow me, I would go for it. But anyhow, someone has to do it. Unfortunately, India's mainstream art, drama, and film industry failed to convey the actual picture of genocide and exodus. Even after over a year of abrogation Article 370 and 35A, we do not see any powerful literature or film telling the world about those horrific stories. I'm really touched by Mr. Vibhuti Jha's connotation. He is spot on that we need to fight this beast. We need to confront and counter this ideology, which is jihadism, which is Islamism. As my friend Razaq Baloch said very rightly, that we have the solution. Be it Baloch, Sindhi, Muhajir, Pashtun, we know how to deal this monster. And what Mr. Jha said, that we need to stand against this thing. Sacred Gita teach us to fight such injustices. And he raised a very important phrase, what next? What next? That is the crux of today's discussion, I must say. We have to ponder upon what next. Why our narrative, not just around Kashmiri issues, our Bharati narrative is so weak, unable to tell the world about Bharat's actual scenario. Look at the farmers' protests. Look at the CAA drama. We do not have any international media that could tell the world about the realities, about the truth, or about the narrative. Unfortunately, we are focused on those, Bollywood dramas and all those cricket glamour. Pakistan used to attack India, and the next day there was a cricket match going on between Pakistan and India. How could it happen? I'm grateful to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, at least finally some leadership recognized the fact that how could you have a conversation in an environment of ammunition? So when Mr. Jha posed a question and asked us, what next, what next? So I must say, we have to work on narrative. It is almost impossible to find any good quality Western style documentary about Kashmir on YouTube, on Netflix. You can go on Netflix, you can go on Amazon Fire, you can go on all these OTT media outlets. You would find everything against India, Hinduism, Bharat. You would hardly find our story, our narrative on those medias because we are unable to produce such content so far. Finally, I would conclude my sort of experience. I contacted some of the higher leadership in Indian government, political leadership. I contacted some of the higher bureaucrats who deal those narrative issues and who deal all those of issues. But unfortunately, even today, I don't see any political will. I was unable to find that political will. I don't blame them. Probably they don't understand it. What Mr. Razaq Baloch says, they need support. We, either myself, Tariq Fatah, our many friends, Razaq Baloch, we do have people on our side who know how to handle Islamization. I cannot explain it here because it's an open forum. Those are very strategical and tactful discussions. They needed to be stirred within a very, very close circle. But we know how to deal it. I have shared those strategies with some of the higher elites in today's government people, but probably they don't understand. So now I think that it is up to us, up to diaspora. We have to generate resources. We have to create strong strategy, tactful strategy to handle this beast. So this discussion, we have to carry on in such discussion, but I would say very frankly, we have to carry such discussion in a very close circles before our strategies go to public, because telling people about our strategies is useless. Now people want to see actions. Yes. We have to make action plans so that we could act on those action plans, either as a media, either to counter Islamic radicalization. We know how to handle them.
Thank you, Razaq.
Give us, we don't need money. You keep all of you could keep money in your accounts, but just listen us and act on those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tahir Bhai. You rightly said India has missed the boat and still continues not developing the correct narratives anywhere around the world for its projects and for its problems. And our adversaries are taking advantage of that against India and Indians and Hindus. And you rightly said the narrative is also missing in form of the visuals and literature. And there are people who are willing and available to take charge. All they need is support from the Indian diaspora and those who believe in Bharat. So we will work with you. Hopefully soon we will have some discussion. So now I move on to my next and last panelist for the day, Dr. Ajay Charango. Dr. Ajay Charango is the chairman of Panun Kashmir, a political movement of Kashmiri Pandits founded as a result of the forced exodus and genocide of Hindus in Kashmir in 1990s. Dr. Charango is a political analyst on Jammu and Kashmir affairs, a freelance writer on human rights and terrorism. Ajay, please talk about Kashmiri Hindu genocide, its denial during the last 31 years by successive governments in India, and the efforts that are being made by your organization under your leadership to bring focus on reversing the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. Ajay.
Namaskar, all the distinguished panelists. See, I'm a victim of genocide. The entire Hindu community of Kashmir is a victim of genocide. So victims do not have a luxury of wishful thinking. And victims cannot commit the crime of telling lies. In fact, victims have a role of nourishing the civilization by telling the truth. We have to understand that the Hindus of Kashmir, if we start from there and then talk about the genocides, which basically are all continuity. It's not something which suddenly happened in Kashmir. Genocides have been happening for a long period of time. Hindus of Kashmir are caught between two monumental destructive processes. The genocide nourished and abetted by the state of Pakistan, and the denial of genocide ultimately for political expediency or a very, very perverted strategic vision of the state of India. We are caught up between these two political processes. In fact, the entire genocidal processes in the civilizational India, they are caught up between these two processes. The genocide which the Pakistani state is capable of inflicting relentlessly on the populations of the civilizational India, and the immense and infinite capability of the Indian state to close its eyes to it. That is the first thing I want to say, that all of us are caught between two monumental processes. The genocide inflicted by Pakistan on the people of the subcontinent or the civilization of India, and the apathy, insensitivity, and the perversion of the state of India to deny it. The second thing which I want to say is related to it. We are dealing with two insanities. The insanity of the very concept of Pakistan. Pakistan being a very abnormal nation, created on a single denominator. But the mistake of thinking that the problem of Pakistan is the state of Pakistan. No, problem of Pakistan is the nation of Pakistan. They have exactly the same state. They have exactly the same infrastructure which can try to protect the abnormality of Pakistan. Because if the state of Pakistan would have been sane and they would have started nourishing, ultimately upholding the diversity of Pakistan, then the Pakistan as the ideological state which would have ceased to exist. We have another insanity, the insanity which the state of India has internalized. It has denied the history of India. It has tried to concoct the history of India. It has nourished the process of memory loss of the people of India. Indian state many times appears to be fighting a war against its own civilization. These two insanities are complementary. Those people who understand the critical importance of the nation of India or the civilization of India, they have to understand these two insanities. These two insanities nourish each other. If we do not recognize it, we will not be able to form a strategy which is required. Now, having said that, I want to say that what is happening in Balochistan, even before that, what happened to the civilization in Afghanistan, what happened subsequently till the partition and after the partition, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, they're all continuities. In POJK, they're all continuities. Now, where from to start? What can be the starting point of our forcing the state of India to take up policies, take up a strategic vision which is critical for the survival of nation of India, which is critical for the survival of civilization of India, in which the entire diversities, Baloch diversities, Sindhi diversities, Punjabi diversities, they come. Doesn't matter what religion they belong to, but who belong to the civilization of India. What is the critical point? We have to understand if India cannot put a halt to the genocide of Hindus in Kashmir, it has no use for the genocide, people suffering genocide in Bangladesh, in Balochistan. It cannot do anything. If it cannot stop the genocide on its own territory, it cannot help anybody. Let us not have that hope. So, in a way, the population of Hindus which has left, which has somehow managed to survive, while being caught up between two monumental genocidal processes. Some friend here told that government of India has now recognized that after banning JKLF, they said that it was responsible for the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. Yes, they did say it officially, and that goes to the credit of the Modi government. But in official parlance, we are still migrants. You'll be surprised. Government of India is still thinking of a tokenist return, a cosmetic return. They are not ready to address the genocide. Now, genocide from that perspective is a critical, again, a point. If Indian state does not has the capacity to put a halt to the genocide on the civilization of India, then it will not be able to play the role in the Committee of Nations. It will become a destructive process. It will become a destructive force for the people of the civilization of India or the subcontinent. So this exactly for that reason that the Indian state has to equip itself with the power of fighting the genocide, recognizing it as a problem, not only the problem of the humanity, recognizing that Pakistan is a genocidal state. Pakistan is the epicenter of genocides. Pakistan is the epicenter of jihad. Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. And Pakistan has to cease to exist unless and until the state of India internalizes this view. The insanity is that the strategic think tanks in India, the topmost over the years, are thinking that if we consolidate Pakistan, if we protect the Pakistan, if we make it powerful, then it will be a peaceful Pakistan. They are not understanding that Pakistan, which is based on the strategic thinking of visualizing itself as a new Medina for the export of Islam towards the East, as a frontline Muslim state, as a springboard of jihad, If you consolidate it, you are consolidating the destructive forces against the civilization of India, the nation of India. But that type of insanity is there. Indian strategic think tanks thought that if they counterpoise the genocide of Hindus as a major symptom of the regressive nature of the so-called freedom struggle in Kashmir, they will be alienating Muslims. So they have to hutch it up. They have to close its mind. And it didn't happen at all levels. I'm telling you, there are 4 subversive processes. Subversive process of which has afflicted the state of India. Subversive process which has afflicted the academia of India. The subversive process which has afflicted some political class of India across the spectrum. And the subversive process which is now afflicting a segment of the Hindu leadership of India. They have a continuity. If Nehruvian vision was wrong, then pursuing a peace with Pakistan on the basis of Musharraf formula started by BJP was even the worst and the perverted version of the Nehruvian vision. If Nehruvian vision was wrong, having an alliance with PDP on the basis of a destructive, subversive agenda of alliance, it was the worst perversion of even the Nehruvian vision. We have to face squarely these 4 subversive processes. Mr. Tahir Gora said rightly that we have to stand. There has to be a standing point. If there is any other way, we should also do it, but there has to. The people living in the attrition zones in the civilizational India, in the subcontinent, they have to cooperate. They have to coordinate. They have to bring their discourse to the level of ridiculing how Indian state has been tackling Pakistan over the years. Imagine the insanity when we defeat Pakistan. The Indian leadership said that now we don't have to behave as victors. What type of a perversion it is? The principal secretary of then Prime Minister of India said that there is something wrong with the mind of India, that we are inconvenient with victories and very comfortable with defeats. There is something which has happened over the year of 1,000 years of attrition of the Indian mind. There's something wrong. We have internalized the problem and we have forgotten the external enemy. Perhaps we have to reach a stage where we externalize it. And in that process, we have to be very clear to the point of ridiculing that the state of India has a problem of thinking. It has a problem of analysis. It has a problem of strategic understanding of the region. Unless we do it together, people inside India and people outside India who understand the criticality of this nature, we will not be able to correct Indian state. And the people of India have to be made to rise up, ultimately transform Indian state. If Indian state does not transform, then we will lose this battle. At the end, I want to tell you that in this whole process, there are many starting points. One of the starting points is that forcing Indian state to incorporate the law of punishing and preventing genocide on the territory of India. Indian state was the pioneer of promoting the Convention of Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Indian state ratified it subsequently, then held it back. So since there is no commitment to fight the genocide which the Pakistan is unleashing, Indian state has no use for the non-Muslims living in Pakistan. The Muslims who believe in a civilizational India, who believe in democracy, who want to create a polity based on right to equality, and who have been subjected to genocide as we are witnessing in Balochistan, Indian state has no use for them. Indian state cannot go and prevent a genocide in Bangladesh of the Muslims and of the Hindus largely. So unless and until we recognize the critical necessity of putting this question to them, why are you diffident in doing it? Why is your commitment lacking to do it? How can you fight this battle, which has a broader connotation? And the broader connotation is destroying the people of India, destroying the civilization of India. Why are you diffident? Why is Indian state alienated from the civilizational needs of the India? So if we are able to do it together, that would be the best tribute to the victims of genocide across in Bangladesh, in Bengal, in Pakistan, across and in Jammu and Kashmir. We will be able to create a bigger moment, a bigger struggle, and bigger transformation. And it is possible. The day Kashmiri Hindus were pushed, that can be a subject for a separate. It's not that there was no resistance. I can tell you, Kashmiri Pandits played a pioneer role in the evolution of the counter-insurgent movement in Kashmir. And I can tell you that it was ultimately the strategic depth which Pakistan had on this side, that this counter-insurgent movement was expunged out. Hundreds of people got killed when the democratic system, from inside, not from outside. So we have a role of serving the nation of India, serving the civilization of India, and at the same time transforming the instrumentalities of the state to ultimately be of use to India, to all people surrounding the India, and to the humanity by and large. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you so much. It's always a delight to listen to you. At this moment, I wish to appeal to all our viewers who joined us today to support our movement by taking part in it. You can participate either by becoming a thought leader, a grassroots volunteer, or an influencer. Like Tahir ji said, we don't want your money. We want your support. We want your support to be able to fight. Then at least you should, if you are not able to fight, at least support those who are willing and available to fight. This brings us to the end of the webinar. In the closing, I would like to thank all our viewers today. I would also like to thank my panelists, Lakshmi Kaul, Meenu Kaul-Bendre, Kanchan Banerjee, Nidhi Fotedar, Rakhil Razdan, Vibhuti Ja, Sandeep Aima, Amita Raina, Razaq Baloch, Tahir Gora, and Dr. Ajay Charango. This program was organized and is being supported by PK Rehinj, Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, and Hindu Pact. And also I want to take this opportunity to thank my team of volunteers, Amita Mittal, Shri Ramachandran, T2 Gunju, Bhupinder Bhatt, Upahar Kotru, Lakshmi Kaul, Ajay Jai Singh, and Geeta Patel. Please join our struggle and keep on supporting us. Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you so much for your support. Namaskar.